you go to CNN and you search for Epstein, there hasn't been a story since since August 7th. But somebody puts out a tweet claiming something, and they'll have that up as breaking news. So your guess is as good as mine. I think the marketplace is open right now for us to go through these documents, see what's been going on, and there's going to be more. By the way, I mean, all we argued for was for the summary judgment documents to be opened. There are even more documents that can be opened under a lower standard. And they're going through those document by document. So this should be, it may be nothing, but it may be a treasure trove of information about some very powerful and wealthy people who wanted to keep their affairs silent. And not today.
Okay, Mark Randazza has only got 2 segments with us because he's got a lot of important work to get to. But after he leaves us, if we have time, I'm going to premiere some of the audio of his closing arguments on this. He's one of the top First Amendment lawyers out there, and his Skype's been going in and out, so we're getting him back on right now. If not, just get him on phone. Jeffrey Epstein, large tranche of files released in the Maxwell suit. That was the reported British intelligence pimp that was working with Epstein. There's a big article up on Infowars.com how this totally absolves Trump, and how the witnesses in the actual suit and the documents that the Democrats didn't want released said that Trump was never involved, never saw Trump. Trump never did anything, never tried to have sex with anybody. But there's a lot more there. And let me tell you, this is just the first news in The Guardian. This is just the first information that we're trying to process. They just got this yesterday. So Mark Randazza, who is the lawyer that did this with Mike Cernovich, joins us now to explain how big this is, but also what else is about to come out. Because I know this tranche, you were telling me this morning, is just 50 times bigger than everything else you've gotten. It's just tons of material. So Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Looks like you're in a nice spot. Where are you?
I'm in a undisclosed location in New England.
All right, brother. Well, get into this. This is huge. Maybe do the backstory of you and Cernovich's lawsuits, why you did it.
Yeah. Well, what was going on is there was a civil suit between Ms. Giuffre, who's claimed that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually abused her, sex trafficked her. I take no position on whether that's true, whether it's not, what happened, what didn't. But what struck Michael and I as very strange is that all of the court documents were sealed. The summary judgment documents were sealed, and that's just not permissible under the First Amendment or under the common law. Those courts don't belong to the parties. Those courts belong to us. So we get to see when a judge is making a decision, what they're basing that decision on. For some reason, this judge let the parties decide for themselves what was going to be public and what wasn't going to be public. And that's simply improper. So Michael retained me to intervene in the case, as with him as a member of the media, saying, hey, it's about time we take a look. Now, what we found really strange was this is going on in the New York Times' backyard. In fact, none of the mainstream press was anywhere to be seen until flight.
You know, Mark, as nice as your background is, it comes in and out. I think it's a Skype issue. We're going to call you on the phone right now. You'll be back in 2 minutes with us. This is such a big deal here because we keep hearing Trump, 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 but there's nothing there. If there was anything there, I would not be, supporting Trump. But all you have is the Clintons and all these other Hollywood people and CNN executives on this airplane with the initials. That's illegal, by the way, with planes flying around, especially out of the country, to just put initials. But they did it because it's children. So they have full names, William Jefferson Clinton, Hillary Rodham Clinton, but then these initials, well, these are 13, 14-year-old girls.
That's insane. I have a kid, so, that just infuriates me to even think of how a human being could even think of doing something like that.
Well, they've had New York Times articles going, it's normal to be attracted to 12 and 13-year-olds. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yeah, but if I say I want to kick that guy in the head who did something like that, then I'm the bad guy. Then the FBI is going to come knocking on my door. Let's let Timmy and little, Esmeralda stay over there and play. He's 50 and she's 12, but you're bad if you say that you want to kick that guy in the head.
What do you think of this whole rollout of pro-pedophilia stuff from Vice and from the New York Times and just from basically hundreds of leftist publications?
It's everywhere.
Are just saying it's wonderful.
I remember when I first started working here, we used to kind of joke that it was going to be LGBT, P or whatever. They're going to put in pedophilia at some point in time, and they're going to try to normalize it. And here, you literally get on Drudge or you get on something, and they're pushing it on all these publications, the Drag Queen Story Time, all this stuff. Oh, it's okay. Love is ageless and all this stuff. No, it's not.
Yet if your kid wants to date a 45-year-old when they're 10, it's okay. It's up to them. Totally sick. We've got Mark Randazza, constitutional lawyer, back, filed this suit, and then now you got even more information. So what's in this new tranche of information?
Look, I haven't even begun going through it yet, but I have seen at least one party that's gone through it. Zero Hedge had a story on it saying that these claims that the claims that some of the press has been pushing that Trump was involved seem to be debunked by this document drop. So that's at least one bit of information that's come out. There's an accusation in there. Remember, none of this stuff is proven. A lot of this is just accusations that Ms. Giuffre made. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not, but about members of the British royal family. So there is a lot to go through there, and I don't want to do it a disservice by digesting it right now. But what I will say is it's a great day for the First Amendment when a previously sealed case, something that was trying, where the parties and the court, I really don't understand I understand why the parties wanted to do it. I mean, the parties really would prefer, in most cases, to do things out of the sight of the public. So I can't really blame them for wanting to do that. I do think that the court made a grave error when it acquiesced to their wishes. And I'm really happy that the Second Circuit has finally said, enough's enough. We're not putting up with this anymore. Let the people see what's going on, because the best way to show that you have a free and open court system is to invite the public in to see for themselves.
Well, I'm just really excited to see all of this, because a lot of times people will use non-disclosures or they'll use sealed cases to then make stuff up behind that curtain. And so some had said, well, Cernovich and Randazza, they're acting in the media like they sued Epstein to get documents that have now kind of triggered a big firestorm of news, but they just were suing to get documents from another suit. Well, there's different ways to skin a cat. I mean, it doesn't matter how you get the documents to find out the truth. It just matters that you get the documents. I don't understand how that becomes like the story out there.
Look, this is not the kind of thing that an independent journalist like Mike Cernovich or even you at any point in the near past, this would never have happened when you had a responsible and involved mainstream media that you could trust. Like, this just never would happen.
You're right, but they've created a vacuum where investigative journalism, ever since ABC won the pink slime suit, mainstream media just ended investigative journalism.
For the most part, I mean, I wouldn't say that about the Miami Herald at this point. The Miami Herald showed up and did its job.
No, exactly. There's still a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hell, the LA Times, the New York Times, even 10 years ago admitted that the FBI was cooking up most of the fake terror things. Now they wouldn't do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Times was asleep at the switch on this, and I think was willingly complicit in keeping it under wraps. Why? I don't know. We can certainly speculate, but I just can't. When I went to journalism school and I learned that the New York Times was really it was the paper of record. These were the ones who came out and fought for the Pentagon Papers. That legacy is dead, because when you don't even see the New York Times showing up for a case like this in their own backyard,
Oh, that's
It really
another
makes
angle.
you
Do
see
one
what
more
they're
segment
made
with
of.
us, because there's no coverage of this hardly. I mean, you're breaking bombshell information, and sure, The Guardian did a story. I mean, there's some stuff. This should be one of the top stories in the country.
One would think, but not today.
Well, you didn't implicate Trump, because if you made up that it was in the documents that Trump raped this girl, you'd be on every channel. Let's come back, Joe Biggs. You jump in, give us your take on this. You've experienced mainstream media lying. Constitutional lawyer Mark Randazza is here. Well, I'm just completely blown away today by President Trump coming out saying he's going to take strong action against big tech soon and Hollywood trying to cause a race war. That was beautiful. Because I'm all for the First Amendment, and these companies have their, quote, right to do things, but not have fake terms of service, not lie about how they're censoring, and we have all the executives saying it and doing it. Mark Randazza, I want to get back into this huge release and this lawsuit and this huge data dump you just got into the Epstein case that's so big. But before we do that, what do you make of Trump coming out this morning saying, no, he's decided he's going to take strong action against big tech? I know that's still on the drawing board, and they're debating hotly which plan they're going to go with. I know you helped write up some reports. I got another major D.C. firm to write up reports. I had a Texas firm write up reports. I had a Los Angeles firm write up reports. We got those to the president. Matt Drudge got our emergency report to Trump to take action. I'm not trying to take credit. The fact is Trump's responsive to his base is what's interesting, and not to lobbyists. That's what's so amazing and why they're so scared of him. But what do you make of this move now, and what are you hoping Trump does? What's the most constitutional, smart avenue to rein in the election meddling of big tech and they're stomping on our free speech areas?
First off, I say it's about time. He's been in office for nearly 3 years now, and it's nice to see this finally happening. I think constitutionally, he could certainly, by executive order, say that no government agencies should be doing business with companies that do not respect freedom of expression as a neutral platform. He can't command that they let people on. If Twitter wants to kick somebody off, and you can't just say, well, by executive order, I'm going to make you let them back on. But what he can say is all the government agencies that have Twitter accounts should cancel them today. He can say that he is not going to, a big move for him would be for him to get off Twitter and move to a competing platform.
Well, I think it's a hint whenever his son came out and promoted Gab yesterday.
Well, maybe that's what's going to happen. That would be a great move. Use the power of the free market to destroy these market players who have decided that they're just going to wield power like petty little apparatchiks.
Well, you made great points. I wrote those same notes. He could forbid the government working with them, declare them like Huawei a national security risk. Google and Apple have moved to China. That would devastate him right there. I know he doesn't want to hurt the stock market in the process, but it's kind of like if you don't do this surgery, you're going to die anyways. And that's what Trump said. It's too bad, but we just got to act. So that's what we've gotten to. And so why would they ban Mitch McConnell speaking out against people at his house saying we're going to stab you to death, but leave the people saying we're going to murder you and calling him Murder Turtle, leave them up, but take him down? Are they asking for it? Is Twitter crazy?
No, look, the problem is these companies, it isn't always top down. I don't know that, Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg really care one way or the other. They might, but you also have...
No, I agree. There's mutiny. They've been hijacked by SJWs.
Yeah, you've got this army of little punks that work for these corporations that are the ones making the ground level decisions. And nobody's really getting them under control. But another thing that I really think that the White House could do is go over to the Department of Justice, grab whoever's working in the antitrust division and tell them, do your job or find another job. Because the antitrust division should be going through Silicon Valley, should be walking through the 650 area code with a death scythe, cutting these companies apart. You're looking now, you see that WhatsApp, bought by Facebook, is going to start looking at all those messages and deciding if they're going to ban you from WhatsApp for private messages and logging private messages. If you're using WhatsApp for anything that you don't want, some nose ring, purple haired jackass looking at and deciding that they're going to publish, well, you're on the wrong platform.
And imagine the control freak power grab where they can't even control themselves when the head of the Senate puts out a mild tweet saying, we decry these calls for violence and hope the Democrats will decry violence as well, with a link to a woman saying they're going to stab him to death. And then they freeze his account and tell the head of the Senate, you now have to bow down. These people are crazy. These people are crazy.
They decide who they want to win, and then they warp the language of their rules in order to let the person win who they want to win.
And it's like you said, though, another, if you have purple hair and a nose ring, we don't care, except that's all these people, or pink hair. Like you said, remember Oliver Darcy said a few months ago, he goes, well, we want to get Alex banned on WhatsApp. We're checking to see if he's on it. That's a private message that Facebook bought up the company. I'm not on there, we learned. But they're literally trying to stop me from sending a message. And I said, folks, and then as you said, you sent me the message last week. It was in the news. Thanks for alerting me to that. They're now admitting they're going to be reading with AI, but with also the personnel reading your text in live time, deciding if you can send them or if they're going to ban you. So literally, they're like, well, they let us control their websites or their Facebooks or Twitters. Now or their Instagrams. Now we'll just literally read what they're doing in live time. The NSA did that, they'd be arrested.
Yeah, they would. But, you know, they let them get away with it, and antitrust is allowing these companies to consolidate at such a rate that, you know, you really have 3 or 4 companies controlling all new media, and you can't have that. So I really hope that, you know, if whoever's at the antitrust division doesn't want to do their job, that Trump, you know, tells them, get out and don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, and brings in somebody who knows what they're doing and who's willing to do the job.
Amazing, Mark. I know you got to take care of your daughters that you've got right now, but just in closing, come back soon when you're able to go through these. How many pages of documents from this huge Epstein lawsuit victory you just had at the major court of appeals, and what can we be expecting? When can we learn more?
Well, you know, right now, as far as I've seen, the best source for who's gone through it so far is Zero Hedge. You know, you go to CNN and you search for Epstein. There hasn't been a story since August 7th. But you know, somebody puts out a tweet claiming something, and they'll have that up as breaking news. So your guess is as good as mine. I think the marketplace is open right now for us to go through these documents, see what's been going on. And there's going to be more, by the way. I mean, all we argued for was for the summary judgment documents to be opened. There are even more documents that can be opened under a lower standard, and they're going through those document by document. So this should be, you know, it may be nothing, but it may be a treasure trove of information about some very powerful and wealthy people who wanted to keep their affairs silent. And not today.
Wow, well, good job. All I can say is that court artist is one of the best I've ever seen. That judge's eyes right there, that's like Rembrandt level, and they really capture you there. That's awesome.
Yeah, she sure made me look good.
Oh, man, that's awesome. All right, Mark, please join us as soon as you can dig through all this. God bless you. Thank you so much. Be safe.
You too. Have a great day.
We got some of the exclusive court audio we'll get to, but Joe Biggs is here too. Just stay with us.
Your Honor, I represent Michael Cernovich, and I am here because my client was following this case, is a journalist, and wished to report on it. And then when he saw that these judicial documents were sealed, thus denying his ability to do so, he sought intervention. Now, I find myself somewhat redundant now because I see that the Miami Herald wants everything open. Ms. Giuffre wants everything open. That sounds good to us, so we only have Ms. Maxwell to overcome. And now, you asked during the last argument, what is it that we should tell the world? And I think we should tell the world that we have the most fair and just and open courts in the world, and come and see for yourself.
But don't you think Ms. Maxwell should have a chance to object to particular documents?
Yes. I couldn't in any seriousness say that you can't do that. But when we have, for example, a motion that gives us this, all black. And now I have this order from a judge here. And I didn't want to print it on one page, but it's just pages and pages of black. I mean, I might expect this from a FOIA request from the CIA, but I can't expect that in an open court where we have a long-standing common law right to access that predates the Constitution, and a First Amendment right to access that is even stronger than that. So I would say that what we should have here is an order that says that all the redactions in this court should be lifted, that the summary judgment order should be completely unredacted.
Does Mr. Cernovich have to be a recognized journalist to make these requests, whether he is or is not? Just accept my question for what it is.
Your Honor, I don't believe that there is any way that we can define recognized journalist.
Right. So what if he's just an interested person? Does he have the same right as a journalist?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe he does, because these courts belong to all of us.
How would you describe him professionally?
He's a
freelance writer?
He started off as a law blogger. He has moved into doing journalism through Periscope and other new means. He's recently put out 2 films, including one called Hoaxed, that is talking about how the media doesn't give us the whole story of everything. So the fact that he doesn't write for, say, the Miami Herald or the New York Times makes him no less of a journalist. The Ninth Circuit had a good decision on this called Obsidian versus Cox, where they said journalism is a thing you do, not a thing you are. Perhaps in some hypothetical world, a journalist license would be a neat thing, but we don't have that, Your Honor.
So he doesn't have to prove credibility as a journalist in order to make these requests?
Well, I think that would be a great idea, but then the New York Times would probably fail that. I mean, would Judith Miller, before you today, pass that test? We went to war because of her misreporting. So, no, I think that would be a very disturbing decision when it comes to the First Amendment, Your Honor.
Do you think anyone off the street who's read a little bit about this case in the Miami Herald, for instance, says, gee, I want to know more about this. I want to know what people did, what they did with these young girls. Could that person make a request?
Yes, Your Honor, precisely.
I think you may be right.
Yes, I think anybody, and in fact, I was going to say any citizen, but even non-citizens. I mean, I handled a case where an ML Capital was up against the Republic of Argentina, and a lot of that docket was sealed, and I represented a foreigner, somebody from Argentina, who wanted to see that case opened up, because the people of Argentina wanted to know what was going on in our case.
We know that case.
Well, this one took place out in Las Vegas. So in that case, that ultimately was information that they also made the argument that since there was some talk about it being under a protective order, they wouldn't have given this testimony otherwise. But that was as unavailing there as it should be here.
What's the procedure that you would recommend to us? You've heard Mr. Bohr's comments and the response to Mr. Bohr's comments. Mechanically, how would you have us direct the district court to proceed? Well,
Your Honor, I think upon first ordering that everything in this case be opened, that the clearly judicial documents be opened, I mean, at least the order and the summary judgment motions. But then whatever's left, I think Mr. Bohr's procedure was a good one. I might suggest that it would be remanded to a random judge in the district. With all respect to Judge Sweet, I think it might not be...
Special master, perhaps?
Perhaps, yes. I don't think it would be fair to remand it to Judge Sweet, who may have, after all this case has gone through, it seems like this case has been very contentious. There's a lot of vituperative pleadings in it. I think somebody who is unfamiliar with the record would actually be more in a better position to make a measured decision on each and every document.
And presumably the district court, whether it's Judge Sweet or any other judge, could appoint a magistrate judge to go through this document by document, or a special master. Is that right?
As a First Amendment lawyer, that would make me very comfortable. Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've reserved 2 minutes. The cell is up again.
Good afternoon again. Paul Cassell again for Ms. Giuffre.
You agree with Mr. Cernovich, don't you?
We agree that there should be broad unsealing of the record.
So there's no contention on this case between...
Well, there is a concern. You asked, how should we describe Mr. Cernovich? We would describe him the way he described himself, as a, quote, slut-shamer, close quote. We would also describe him as a proxy or stand-in for Mr. Dershowitz. Dershowitz, as we're going to hear shortly, is bound by a protective order and cannot disclose documents. And there were never any factual findings. We made that allegation in the district court that the only reason Mr. Cernovich showed up a few days after Mr. Dershowitz was unable to get some documents was that he was an ally of Mr. Dershowitz and acting as his stand-in.
If we agree with what you described, Mr. Cernovich, as a slut-shamer, whatever that is, if we agree, does that mean he's not entitled to the First Amendment protections?
He's not entitled to operate as a slut-shamer who is the cat's paw for Alan Dershowitz.
What's the phrase? I don't quite...
Slut-shamer.
S-L-U-T.
Right. He believes that...
H-A-M-B-E-R.
Yeah, he believes that women cannot be raped and different things that are enumerated in our pleading.
You would agree that every citizen has the right to access these documents, right?
Certainly. And I do need
Why do we have to go down this path of characterizing what he does or what he is?
Well, and in fact, in terms of going down the path, that we believe there's no jurisdiction, as this court has asked us to brief in supplemental pleadings. Remember the order that's under review. I think it was described as Giuffre 3. That's the order on May 2nd. And what does Judge Sweet say? At this time, let me just underscore that, at this time, I can't unseal the documents because I've got a jury selection process in 3 weeks. That is the order that Mr. Cernovich has in front of you. That's the definition of a provisional order. That's the definition of something over which collateral order review does not exist. There was not a conclusive determination that the documents would or would not be unsealed. And so this is a simple case we would submit. You say no jurisdiction, see Nozick versus Singer, provisional order. If you had been disappointed 2 or 3 weeks later, you should have gone back to Judge Sweet at that time. Remember, the briefs from Cernovich say, there was never a need for a jury to be selected, so the order doesn't properly balance anything. That's, again, precisely the definition of a provisional order. At that point in time, May 2nd, we would have agreed at that time there were compelling reasons to keep the documents sealed rather than have them publicized and complicate jury selection process.
But to go back to Judge Pooler's question earlier at the very beginning of Mr. Randazza's remarks, it appears that you and Cernovich are in complete agreement that the whole record, or as much of it as possible, should be made public on the merits, forgetting the characterization of your respective clients.
Yes.
You're in agreement. Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Why weren't there any objections made during the course of this by your client? Because the blanket sealing order said anybody can object at any time. So why during this whole time didn't she say, well, some of this or most of it should be unsealed?
We were worried about jury selection. The protective order says this will all evaporate at trial, and she assumed that all the depositions were going to come in, all the witnesses were going to testify, and the factual record of how she was sexually trafficked would have been made available to the world at that time. But Ms. Maxwell chose to settle the case shortly before it went to trial. And that goes right to a point that Judge Cabranes was making earlier. There is no reliance interest. Somebody can't say, we were relying on the protective order to keep this sealed. The protective order itself was going to evaporate at trial. And that's what Ms. Giuffre understood was going to happen, that her story would have been told to the world when the trial happened.
In fact, she shopped her memoir, didn't she, to publishers, thereby losing any secrecy attaching to it?
I don't think that's a long and complicated factual record, but she certainly had an opportunity to tell a few journalists portions of her story. I think that's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Mr. Randazza, you've reserved 2 minutes.
Yes, Your Honor. I would just say that, however, I find the characterization of Mr. Cernovich to be incorrect. I don't find any evidence for what his thoughts are, but I don't think it matters. We can bring, as Your Honor said, I think any person could come in off the street and say, I'd like to see what's happening in this courtroom. Mr. Cernovich is not asking for these things for himself. He is not saying, give them only to me. He's saying to show them to the world. So if you want to say that Mr. Cernovich is the worst guy in the whole world and he shouldn't get them, well then maybe we could. I mean, that just sounds like it would be some kind of a strange finding that because a bad guy asked, or a guy you don't like asked, we're going to set aside common law and the First Amendment. We don't need to ask why, when this is a fundamental right. If we had a Third Amendment case in front of us, we wouldn't be asking, why don't you want troops quartered in your house? It's because it's the Constitution, and that's that, and it applies to all of us. Thank you.
Well, today, InfoWars Live protein bar. I just devoured your cousin InfoWars Live protein bar. They taste like candy bars. This is what I want. This is what I need. But my God, there's no fillers. But my God, it's solid. Protein bar, highest quality. 12 bars, highest quality. Now you can bite into it easily, but you're going to be like, what in the world's going on here? Well, today, InfoWars Live protein bar. I just devoured your cousin InfoWars Live protein bar. Delicious vanilla. Delicious vanilla. Delicious vanilla. Meet my tummy.
Alec.
Yes.
I got a plug for the Patriot points I get.
Oh, thanks.
I've gotten $180 so far this year in Patriot Point, and I feel like I'm stealing from you. I buy so much in the store because, I don't want to give that money to Walmart. I don't want to give that money to people who are going to donate it to causes I don't believe in, so I'd rather give that money to you, and I'm getting quality product. The products that I do receive have changed my life. The X2 has really done a lot for me. I've lost weight. My brain works a whole lot better. My kids, they use the toothpaste. My son used to get these little sore throats, and he puts X2 in water and drinks it, and it gets rid of his sore throat.
Well, sir, let me break this down for you. I've never really done marketing, but I did bring in a few advertising people a few years ago who knew how to advertise online, and they said, Mr. Jones, they said, what's your markup? And I said 150%, but we always discount 25%, so that's 100%. And they said, yeah, and then you're always discounting 20, 30%, and then we notice you only sell stuff when it's at 50%, and then you're barely making any money. You need to stop that. And they looked at our data, and they said, oh, your audience would buy it if it was even more. And I said, I want high-quality stuff in there. I want a good price. But I've kind of habituated everybody, trained everybody, myself done this, to where everybody buys when it's 50% off. I'm making $2 on the toothpaste 50% off because there's no fillers, it's concentrated, it's got iodine, a little silver. And so it's the same thing with like the fish oil or the turmeric or the bone broth. DNA Force, I signed a multi-year contract on that. So I was able to cut the price about 40% of what we were paying. It's still got $30-something of product in it. You talk about cleaning your cells out, you talk about energy stamina, you talk about letting the telomeres last longer. This is patented to do that, and nobody puts this much of the real organic stuff in it. So yes, DNA Force is amazing. Thank you so much for the plugs. But listen, when people get the Patriot points, a lot of times it makes things a loss leader, because if you're already getting 10% off because you're on auto ship, and then we're doing 50% off, and then you do something like that where you have Patriot points, we lose money, but that's okay. So thanks for the support. This is important. I'm 45 years old. When I was 35, I swam to 2 miles a day sometimes and would jog and couldn't lose weight because I didn't have the missing links. I was deficient in things that nobody ever told me I was deficient in. I knew all about the private Federal Reserve, the Trilateral Commission, the New World Order, Jeffrey Epstein and the pedophile rings. I knew all about geopolitical systems and the old Soviet Union and how the globals put the Chi-Coms in. But I didn't know about PQQ. I didn't know about CoQ10. I didn't know about all this. And I didn't know about clean iodine. And yeah, I want to fund my operation. I want you to get products that have changed my life and changed so many other people's lives, that have 98% reviews, and then experience that I'm not BSing you. So that for some of you, maybe in the first time in your life, you're going to experience somebody that treats you like they want to be treated. Let me tell you something right now. You see DNA Force? I went out to top manufacturers, they're the most respected, most highly tested. And I said, I want the strongest PQQ, CoQ10 overall formula that has pure, non-synthetic stuff in it that's ever been put on the market. And they said, well, that's like a $22 each bottle. I said, I want to put $50 a bottle in. They said, nobody's ever done that. Then I signed a contract to double the amount I was going to buy. I got it down to $30-something a bottle for what it cost me to make this. Nobody does that. Ladies and gentlemen, you read what's in this and you research every ingredient in this and then you experience it for yourself. It's incredible.
InfoWars presents The David Knight Show, The Alex Jones Show, and The War Room with Owen Troyer. Infowars.com/show.